everyone, and thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the half hour. Iran threatens to block more trade routes as U.S. launches fresh strikes. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country is working to achieve greater independence in weapons production, warning against any future attack. Plus, the UK announces social media curfew for older teenagers. Let's begin the world today. We begin in the Middle East, where Iran is threatening it will block more trade routes in the region as the U.S. airstrikes against the country continues. According to the Revolutionary Guards, the Strait of Hormuz would remain shut until the U.S. ends its so-called acts of aggression. Iran has also threatened to close off other regional oil and gas exports channels. The warning came as the U.S. Military Central Command says it carried out drone, air, and Navy strikes on Iran this morning, following another 7-hour operation overnight. Fresh hostilities between the U.S. and Iran in recent days have served to underscore the strategic importance of the strait to the global economy. The renewed attacks have also triggered a sharp rise in oil prices as tanker traffic through the vital shipping route has virtually stalled. Meanwhile, the Iranian army has released footage showing missiles being launched towards the U.S. base in Azraq in Jordan. The location and time of the filming cannot be independently verified, but the Iranian army confirms in the 7th phase of Operation Lightning and as a continuation of the destruction drone strikes carried out by the Army of the Islamic Republic of Iran against American bases in the region, the deployment sites of F-18 fighter jets, the residence building, and the large equipment warehouse belonging to the U.S. Army at Azraq base in Jordan were targeted hours ago with destructive drone attacks. The Jordanian Armed Forces announced its air defenses intercepted and shot down 3 missiles coming from Iranian territory. U.S. Central Commanders also announced on July 14 it carried out an additional round of strikes against Iran, targeting dozens of military sites near the Strait of Hormuz and Iranian coastal areas. And the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country is working to achieve greater independence in weapons production. He's also sounded a warning to Tehran against any future attacks. Netanyahu was given a video address. He said Israel has significantly weakened Iran and its network of allied armed gangs across the region, saying in Hebrew, "We came settled to score with those who wish us harm from Gaza to Yemen, from Lebanon to Iran. We removed from above us the imminent threat of nuclear weapons in the hands of Iran. And I again commit that as long as I am the Prime Minister of Israel, Iran will not have nuclear weapons." Reflecting on the war that followed the October 7, 2023 Hamas-led attack, Netanyahu said Israel had fundamentally revised its security doctrine and reshaped the strategic landscape across the region. He added that Israel's military actions had strengthened ties with regional partners behind the scenes, saying cooperation with several countries had expanded and could eventually pave the way for further normalization agreements. Tensions in the Middle East escalated overnight with multiple attacks carried out against Iran and other countries in the GCC as both the U.S. and Iran seek to enforce guardianship of the Strait of Hormuz, the primary global shipping route. Whilst Iran is attacking vessels transiting parts of the strait, the U.S. says it has degraded Iran's ability to attack commercial shipping. Dubai correspondent Mayowa Adegoke has a recap of events over the past 24 hours.
Passengers traveling via Dubai and Sharjah airports on Tuesday morning faced flight cancellations after Yemen's Houthis targeted an international airport in Saudi Arabia with missiles and drones, disrupting services connecting both Middle Eastern nations. The incident comes as tensions continue rising following failed mediations between the U.S. and Iran, particularly concerning the Strait of Hormuz. The UAE government reports Iran missiles attacked 2 national tankers transiting the southern shipping lane of the strait within Omani territorial waters, killing 1 person and injuring 8 others. Other GCC nations fielding attacks from Iran include Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan. A latest video by the U.S. Central Command also shows a series of attacks against a submarine and ship maintenance facility in Iran, saying the operation marks the first time American forces have employed sea drones in combat operations. It also claims the strikes have degraded Iran's ability to continue attacking commercial shipping. Iran's Persian Gulf Strait Authority has now declared the strait closed. However, the U.S. claims otherwise, stating it will enforce a fresh blockade at 12 midnight UAE time. For this, President Trump is proposing a 20% fee for safe passage, a plan which could further irritate already high shipping costs caused by disruptions to movement on the strait. As tensions continue to rise, the UK government has updated its travel advice for the UAE, urging British nationals to review travel plans. From Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Maya Wadegoke for Channels Television News.
We have Mayowa joining us now on the program. Mayowa is in Dubai. Great to see you as always. Let's begin with how the UAE government is handling those airstrikes from Iran. I know they're not directly hitting cities or towns, but can we still say possibly the UAE is in a state of war with Iran?
Well, going by the UAE stance, we won't say that they are in a state of war with Iran, although they have constantly maintained their right to respond to any attack. And the same stance we've seen from day one, February 28th, is still the same stance as of today. They constantly condemn any attack, whether against the UAE or against neighboring GCC nations. And they further restate that they have the right to defend their territory and respond to any attack. But as of yet, the UAE is yet to directly engage Iran in any act of war.
So what's really going on land? Because I understand, most of these strikes are happening, at sea with UAE ships being targeted. So what's happening on land? The last time the U.S. did a strike on Iran, and then Iran, directed its airstrikes to neighboring Middle Eastern countries. The UAE was one of them. Some parts of the country was hit by the strikes. So what's currently happening now?
So there's a difference in this current resurgence. As you rightly mentioned, the first round, UAE was engaged a lot. Iran's fury was really targeted at the UAE more than any other GCC nation. This time around, the UAE has been spared. The reason is unclear, but the UAE has been spared. We're not getting those missiles and drones as they were in the beginning. However, other nations are not as fortunate. Even Saudi is engaged with the Houthis attacking the Saudi airport, which has now impacted air travel between UAE and Saudi for the second day running. So we keep our eyes peeled on ground. A lot is at peace. Over the last couple of days, especially during the 60-day period where they were mediating, we could tell that tourism began to bounce back in the UAE. Again, it's summer, so people usually travel, especially residents who typically travel during summer. But we have seen people begin to come back to the UAE. We're beginning to see events take place. We're beginning to see parties again. But of course, with this resurgence, everyone will have their eyes peeled. Of course, it's going to bring some tension because previously when things got quiet, people would be like, okay, maybe that's the end. We can move on with our lives. Now people will begin to recalculate again, re-strategize again. They will have their eyes peeled to say, okay, what is the plan going forward? Winter is a season where everyone's anticipating a high return of visitors, high return of events and the like, which would translate well for business. But now with this resurgence, we would just have to keep watching to see what happens.
Maya, in your report, you did talk about the 20% passage fee that the Trump administration imposed on the Strait of Hormuz. I know that the ownership or the administration of the Strait of Hormuz has been in contention. Iran did announce over the weekend it was shutting the strait. The U.S. said it remained open. So who controls the Strait of Hormuz as we speak?
As of now, we would say that everyone's trying to control the Strait of Hormuz. No one has 100%. The U.S. has already enforced that blockade, particularly on Iran waters. So pretty much any ship trying to get in or out of Iran has been blocked. And we keep our eyes peeled. One other part of that report is Iran now extending its attacks to ships not close to Iran itself. So you do know that there's an Omani part of the Strait of Hormuz, and we're now beginning to see, just as the two UAE national carriers were attacked, Iran is extending these attacks to ships, even navigating within Omani territorial waters. So that really just shows us that Iran is trying to enforce its power and authority across the board, whether it's within their territorial waters or the Omani territorial waters. So everyone's trying to have 100% control of the Strait of Hormuz. And again, it's just not just impacting the region, it's impacting global shipping, because you do know that this impacts global prices. So as of yet, no one has 100% control. And of course, that's what they're fighting for.
Mayowa, thank you again for speaking with us and for bringing us up to speed with what's going on in the UAE as regards the war between the US and Iran.
Thank you for having me.
Well, staying in the region, U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has announced the end of Washington's counter-ISIS mission in Iraq, dubbed Operation Inherent Resolve. Hegseth welcomed the Iraqi Prime Minister Ali al-Zaidi to the Pentagon on Tuesday. It was al-Zaidi's first foreign trip since assuming the role in May. Operation Inherent Resolve was launched in 2014 after ISIS seized a large part of Iraq and Syria. Although the group later lost its territorial caliphate, coalition troops have remained in Iraq in an advisory role. Under a U.S.-Iraq agreement, that mission is due to end by September 30 this year, with cooperation continuing through a bilateral security partnership.
Look forward to partnering with based on mutual. Great Americans in this building spent their lives, and many lost their brothers, fighting for the future of Iraq. Like the great Americans that I mentioned, Iraqis as well have shed blood fighting ISIS, inch by inch, fighting to free your country from ISIS's grip. And today we will affirm publicly that Operation Inherent Resolve will conclude its counter-ISIS mission from Iraq on the timeline previously jointly announced. Iraq was not Saddam's, Iraq was not Al-Qaeda's or ISIS's, and it's not Iran's. It's a strong, sovereign country that we could look forward to partnering with based on mutual benefits. We look forward to your leadership, we appreciate your courage and boldness, and we look forward to finding ways to partner in the future.
Outgoing UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer made one of his most emotional appearances in Parliament today, saying to colleagues, "This is the end of my political journey." Starmer and Tory leader Kemi Badenoch exchanged jokes about their previous clashes before he steps down as Labour leader and hands power to Andy Burnham. Badenoch asked Starmer if he agrees Burnham should have come to the Commons and answer questions instead of scurrying away for the summer. The Prime Minister says he's sure Badenoch will question Burnham in the same way she has grilled him. Starmer and Badenoch also led tribute to Anne Whitcomb after she was killed last week. The Prime Minister said we must do more to defend our democracy, while Badenoch describes Whitcomb as a woman of high principle with wicked sense of humour. He also spoke a bit about the upcoming England-Argentina match tonight at the FIFA World Cup.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I have an important appointment with the television at 8 o'clock this evening.
And the UK government has announced that older teenagers in the UK will face an overnight social media curfew, though they will be able to opt out of it by changing their account settings. It would mean apps such as Instagram, TikTok and YouTube being set to be unavailable by default to 16 and 17-year-olds between midnight and 6 a.m. The government also wants addictive features such as autoplay and infinite scroll to be set to be disabled saying combined with the curfew, the measures will improve teenagers' focus, sleep quality, and family life. However, campaigners such as Ellen Room, who believes her 14-year-old son, Jules Sweeney, died in an online challenge gone wrong in 2022, does not think the plan goes far enough, as teenagers can switch the setting off. The new plans follow the announcement in June that under-16s in the UK would be banned entirely from a range of platforms. It adds to a complex and potentially confusing mix of policies and measures from the government and tech firms intended to keep young people safe online. They include optional parental controls over children's devices and child-only versions of popular sites such as YouTube. Still ahead on The World Today. The Philippines opens the first phase of the world's largest single-site solar and battery project. Stay with us. Welcome back. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has committed to pursuing an EU-wide ban on social media use for children after an expert panel recommended restricting access for those under 13. For more on this now, let's cross to Thomas Sparrow, a correspondent with our partners DW in Berlin. Welcome, Thomas. Great to see you. How is this proposal being received in Europe, both politically and among the public?
There does seem to be momentum here in Europe for these kinds of proposals. And in fact, several individual members of the European Union have already moved forward with proposals at a national level. The European Commission says, in fact, that there's a window of opportunity when it comes to now discussing something that would not be based on every single individual country, but rules that would apply to the whole of the European Union. There seems to be momentum because there is an understanding among experts that social media platforms have the potential to impact the well-being and the mental health of teenagers in a negative way. There seems to be momentum as well because an understanding that these platforms must provide a safe environment for teenagers to actually use them. If there isn't a ban in place, in that case, obviously, teenagers would not use them in the first place. The European Commission has basically compared that to car manufacturers that are required by law to produce cars that are actually safe by design. In other words, users, drivers are not expected to bring their own seatbelt, they're not expected to bring their own airbags. The cars have to be produced in a safe way by design. And that is something that they want to extrapolate, that they want to also make sure that it happens in the social media sphere, that these big companies, these big tech companies actually produce social media platforms that are safe by design. And that's why now there's this whole big discussion here in Europe, in other parts of the world as well, about what needs to be done that when users actually go onto these social media platforms, that they can do it in a safe way. Specifically, we're talking now obviously about teenagers.
Indeed. And how likely is it, Thomas, that the Commission can turn this into an EU-wide rule, given the child safety measures are now handled unevenly across member states?
So there are some in Europe that say that it's important that national countries, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, others, have actually taken the lead and have also proposed measures at a national level. But these measures, as you can imagine, are mixed. They're not always the same in Germany compared to France or compared to Portugal or compared to Poland. Each country there has presented specific proposals and is more or less advanced. And this has one very important problem, namely the fact that these proposals would be very difficult to implement in a practical level. Just imagine a teenager that is using TikTok or that is using Instagram, and he or she is using that in France, where there would be a ban in place, and then moves to Germany, where it's a bit more skeptical, the view on a specific social media ban, or then go to Poland or to the Baltic states that see the issue very differently. It would be a very difficult thing to enforce. And that's why there's an interest, specifically now, and that's something that European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also stressed, an interest in having EU-wide regulation on this. Basically, a regulation that would apply to all 27 members of the European Union. It may sound good, but it's also something difficult to implement, because if every country has different views on this, if every country has different priorities when it comes to what teenagers can or cannot do online, then it will be very difficult to find consensus. Those who see it positively say it's actually something that needs to happen. Those who view it in a skeptical way say that ultimately what could happen at an EU-wide level is that countries then have a minimum consensus, which ultimately is not enough to make sure that children and teenagers are protected online.
So, Thomas, finally, how have the major social media platforms reacted to this debate about bans in Europe?
Well, as you can imagine, they are not in favor of bans. On the one hand, that would affect the number of users that enter these social media platforms. They also believe, and they have believed that for a long time, that they are indeed putting safeguarding measures in place, that they do have elements in their own social media design that can help to verify the age of users, that can help to keep children and teenagers protected, and that can actually lead to a safe environment online. But this is something that experts, officials at a European level, by the way, also officials at a national level here in Europe, do not necessarily agree with. That's why there is such a debate in Europe. That's why there is such a debate in other parts of the world regarding what needs to be done beyond what is already in place by the social media platforms. And there's the idea, there's the necessity coming from Europe that it has to be regulated. And there's a big discussion here as to what that essentially would mean. From a European perspective, this would not be the first time that they actually tackle what they believe, what the European Union believes is a dangerous algorithm and a dangerous design by the social media platform. In fact, the European Commission has criticized Meta for its algorithms. It has criticized TikTok for its algorithms, considering that those algorithms are harmful and can negatively affect the well-being and the mental health of users. The social media platforms are also required under a very important law here in Europe called the Digital Services Act to protect users online. But the momentum now is to have a specific rule, a specific set of regulations designed to make sure that teenagers and young adults are protected online. And that's why you have this momentum. That's why you have all these discussions underway. What comes next is for the European Commission to present these proposals for regulation at a European-wide level, for the different member countries to discuss and decide on ultimately what's at stake. And that's something that European member states have stressed time and time again, is the mental health and the well-being of children and teenagers online.
Well, thanks a lot, Thomas. You've been quite detailed with your reporting today. Thanks for joining us on the program. Venezuela's acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, has received a new shipment of humanitarian aid from Russia, 35 tons of supplies for survivors of the June earthquakes. She thanked countries that had joined the humanitarian aid effort for the helping hand they had extended to Venezuela in a moment of pain. The shipment consists of 9.5 tons of non-perishable food, 4.5 tons of medical supplies, and 21 tons of personal care items. It also includes 30 family tents that will shelter about 300 people, in addition to units of insulin for patients with diabetes and laboratory kits for the detection of serious disease. After the devastating earthquake on June 24, Russia sent flights with humanitarian aid, including medical and pharmaceutical items, household goods, tents, among other supplies. The Deputy Chief Spokesperson for the European Commission, Olaf Gilles, today gave a pretty cheeky vote of confidence before their World Cup semi-final against Argentina, joking that the Three Lions' Irish connections have given Brussels another reason to cheer them on. England face defending champions Argentina at Atlanta Stadium later today, with Spain waiting in the final after beating France 2-0.
I can't at this point speak on behalf of the President, who, as I mentioned, is in Kiev, about to receive a very fantastic award and moreover is going to make some really important and meaningful announcements today, but I can say from my perch here, having observed the very positive interactions between our principals and their UK counterparts in this House yesterday, that we wish the English team and its many players of Irish descent all the best in their semi-final against Argentina this evening. And yes, of course, we hope for an all-European final.
Well, it will be a match to watch, I tell you. Finally, the Philippine President Fernando Marcos Jr. and Mercalo Chairman Manuel Pangilinan have inaugurated the first phase of the Entera solar project, marking a major step in the country's push to expand renewable energy and reduce its dependence on imported fossil fuels. President Marcos said the projects arrived at a critical moment for the Philippines after years of reliance on conventional energy sources left the country exposed to global market shocks. The president said the government had worked closely with private sector partners to accelerate renewable energy projects, describing Metera Solar as one of the clearest results of that policy. Now, once both phases are complete, the project is expected to supply electricity to more than 2.4 million households and cut greenhouse gas emissions by approximately 4.3 million tons each year, according to President Marcos. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Uvani.